So here we go. Rhythm Reading Bootcamp, Season 1, Episode 2, Fundamentals of Music Notation. Now, this might seem like a very obvious set of facts that we're going to cover, but I have to assume that no one knows anything, so nobody's left out. If you have zero experience of reading music, that's absolutely fine. We're going to take things from the year dot. So, every piece of written music you will see will start off with the same thing. This arrangement of 5 lines and 4 spaces, which we call the stave, or the staff, perhaps, depending on which side of the Atlantic you might be living. And the staff is the blank canvas on which all the sounds that we're going to be playing are placed. At the start of the music, on the staff, we have the clef. Now, the clef is a device. Really, the word clef means key. Now, clef is a key to understanding which pitches the lines and the spaces of the stave represent. Now, there are lots of clefs, but the most common one is the treble clef. And since we're playing the bass, we're going to be using the bass clef for lower pitched instruments. Now, although this series is aimed primarily at bass players, you don't have to be a bass player to get lots of knowledge out of this series. So if you're not a bass player, don't panic. It's okay, you're still welcome. Written music is divided up into small repeating cells called bars, which are designed to make the piece more manageable. It's much easier to read small chunks than one endless stream of notes and rhythms. Bars also allow us to keep track of where we are in the music, and particularly if you're working with other musicians from the same score, it's nice and easy to communicate where you're going to pick things up from. Maybe if you're in a rehearsal, you might say, we're going to go from bar 24. Much easier that way. In addition to regular single bar lines, there are other types of bar lines which have different functions. So a double bar line marks out the end of a section, indicates where things might be changing. So for example, in a lot of the charts that I write, I might use a double bar line to indicate that we're moving from a verse to a chorus or to a different section. Repeat marks indicate that a section is to be played again. If you want to play that section more than once again, you'd use a multiple repeat mark. Now, quite often, a repeated section of music might have a slight variation in the last bar or two. If you think about having a chorus that you might play twice, the second time you play it, you might be playing a different line, moving into a verse or a bridge. And instead of writing that thing out twice in full, we can use repeat marks and then something called first and second time bars to communicate the fact that we're playing something different the second time. So in this example, you play the first time bar on the first playthrough, and then on the repeat, because it's the second time that we're playing it, we're going to skip out the first bar and play the second time bar. Final bar lines are used to indicate the end of a piece of music. So those are all the different types of bar lines that you might encounter in a piece of music. But what is it that dictates the amount of music that we're squeezing into each bar? It's time to talk about time. So at the top of the piece of music that you might be reading, you might see a metronome marking, a tempo indicator. Tempo is the speed of the music, and this number is a measurement of beats per minute, or BPM, which tells you how fast or slow the piece might be. Now, it's important to double check the note value that the BPM corresponds to. Usually it's quarter note, so 1 beat per click, but it might be something else. It's just always worth double checking that. At the start of the piece of music you're going to be reading, you'll see a pair of numbers, which is the time signature. And that tells us everything we need to know about how to count the music. Most of the Western popular music that you would have heard up to this point is in what we call 4/4 time, meaning that each bar has 4 beats in it. If you count along to most mainstream pop songs that you might hear on the radio, if anyone still listens to the radio, you'll feel that they fall into a repeating pattern, repeating cycle of 4 beats. Now, depending on the music that you're most passionate about, the music that you want to play, you might encounter a variety of other time signatures, often in the same piece, if you're into progressive metal. So we need a way to easily decode any time signature. Now, every time signature is made up of just 2 numbers. The top number, which we're going to refer to here as X, is the number of beats in a bar. That's pretty straightforward. Most of the time, for most people, I would imagine that's going to be 4. But in theory, it could be anything. And on your travels, you will probably encounter a range of time signatures that vary from anywhere between 2 and 12 beats in a bar. Obviously that depends on the music that you're going to be playing. But for most of us, most of the time, we're going to be dealing with 4/4, possibly 3/4, maybe 6/8. We'll talk about what that means in a second. The bottom number, which we're going to refer to as Y, is the type of note value that's used for each beat of the bar. Now, unlike the number of beats in the bar, this has set parameters and can only be certain numbers, which mean different things. Normally it's a 4 on the bottom of the time signature, and that means quarter notes. So 4/4 really means 4 quarter notes, or notes that add up to that equivalent time value in a bar. It could also be 8 at the bottom. So 8 would mean 8th notes. 16, as you might have guessed already, is going to be 16th notes. Those are the most common ones. Again, on your musical travels, you might encounter some other things. It's possible to have 2 at the bottom of a time signature, that's half notes, or 32, which would be 32nd notes. I'm going to hope for your sake that you don't encounter a lot of music that has 32 at the bottom of the time signature, because it's likely to be horrific to play. So using this system of knowing that the top number is the number of beats and the bottom number is the type of beat, we can pretty much instantly decode any time signature. Let's have a look at the most common time signatures that you might encounter on a day-to-day basis as a bass player. So 4/4, pretty straightforward. 4 quarter notes in a bar. 3/4, waltz time, classic ballad thing. 3 quarter notes in a bar. The counterpart of 3/4, 6/8, 6 eighth notes. Some odd time things. 7/4, 7 quarter notes in a bar. 5/4, 5 quarter notes in a bar, and so on. It's a pretty straightforward system to decipher once you've put it into practice a few times. So that's all there is to it for time and time signatures. In the next video, we're going to discuss some basic note values and how to count them.